Mark sat at his desk long after most employees had left the downtown New York office, the glow of his computer reflecting in tired eyes. Papers were neatly stacked, his work always precise, always on time. For him, this job wasn't just about survival. It was about his daughter Lily, waiting at home, trusting him to keep their small world stable. He checked his phone briefly, smiling at her last message, then returned to finishing a report. The office was quiet, almost too quiet, when the elevator door suddenly opened with a sharp sound that broke the calm. Heavy footsteps echoed across the polished floor. Mark looked up as two uniformed police officers entered, followed by a third in plain clothes. Conversations in nearby cubicles stopped instantly. Everyone turned to watch. The officers walked straight toward Mark with purpose. His boss, Mr. Hargrove, stepped out of his glass office, curiosity mixed with something colder in his expression. "Mark Reynolds," one officer asked firmly. Mark stood up slowly, calm but alert. "That's me," he replied, his voice steady without much explanation. The officer informed him he was under arrest, in connection with an ongoing investigation. Gasps spread across the office. A few co-workers whispered. Others stared in disbelief. Mr. Hargrove folded his arms, a faint smirk forming, as if his suspicions about Mark had finally been confirmed. Mark didn't argue, didn't panic. He simply placed his hands forward as instructed. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked into place, loud in the silence as they began escorting him out. Mark's eyes briefly scanned the room, not in fear but in quiet calculation. His posture remained straight, controlled, almost disciplined in a way that didn't match the situation. One of the younger officers glanced at him, clearly confused by how composed he seemed. Most people resisted, protested, or begged. Mark did none of that just before reaching the elevator. Mark stopped for a second and looked back at Mr. Hargrove. There was no anger in his expression, only a calm certainty. "You might want to check my file again," he said quietly. The words weren't a threat, but they carried weight. The officers exchanged brief looks, sensing something unusual, but continued leading him out. As the elevator doors closed, a strange tension lingered in the office. What seemed like a simple arrest suddenly felt like the beginning of something far more complicated. The office had barely settled after the arrest, when the uneasy silence turned into restless murmurs. Employees whispered in small groups, glancing toward Mr. Hargrove, who stood stiffly near his office door, trying to maintain control of the situation. He adjusted his tie, forcing a confident expression, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Something about Mark's calm reaction didn't sit right. It wasn't the behavior of someone guilty. Still, he brushed the thought aside, convincing himself that the authorities knew what they were doing. Downstairs near the building entrance, the officers had just guided Mark outside when a black SUV pulled up abruptly. The tires screeched slightly, drawing attention from pedestrians nearby. A senior officer stepped out quickly, his expression tense and urgent. "Stop right there," he called out sharply. The officers escorting Mark froze. "Remove those cuffs now." His tone wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Confusion spread across their faces, but they obeyed immediately. The handcuffs were removed, and Mark flexed his wrists slightly. Still composed, the senior officer approached him with visible respect. Lowering his voice, "Sir, we received updated clearance." "There's been a mistake." Mark gave a small nod, as if he had expected this all along. "I figured it would catch up," he replied calmly moments later. The group re-entered the building. The shift in atmosphere was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, as everyone watched Mark walk back in, not as a suspect, but with a quiet authority that filled the room. The same officers who had arrested him now walked slightly behind him. Mr. Hargrove stepped forward, his face pale, struggling to process what he was seeing. The senior officer addressed the room briefly, his voice firm. "Mr. Mark Reynolds is not under investigation. He has been assisting in a confidential federal operation." Gasps filled the air. Hargrove's confidence shattered completely. That's not possible," he muttered, but no one was listening to him anymore. Mark finally spoke, his tone steady. "I kept things quiet for a reason." He didn't elaborate, didn't boast. He simply picked up his belongings from his desk. The room watched in silence as the truth settled in. The man they had underestimated wasn't just another employee, he was someone far more capable than they had ever imagined.